Hi everyone, my name is Shubhra Pant, and this video is a presentation on the environmental disaster that occurred in Picher, Oklahoma, that led to it being regarded as a ghost town. The objective and purpose of this video are to highlight the events leading to the environmental disaster in Picher, Oklahoma, and to inform of the negative impacts of the unregulated mining. The contents in this presentation include an introduction about the topic, background on the town's mining activities, its associated economic environmental impact, and a summary at the end, along with graphs, tables, and photos. The town of Picher, Oklahoma is sometimes regarded as the site of the biggest environmental disaster and has been declared as one of the most toxic cities in America. It was once a thriving mining community, but today it is inhabited primarily by wildlife, but it can be lethal for them as well. In 2015, more than 1,000 migratory birds were discovered dead from what was thought to be zinc poisoning. Picher is a former city in Ottawa County in northeastern Oklahoma. Before the environmental disaster, it was a significant town in the Tri State Mining District, which encompassed parts of Kansas, Missouri, and Oklahoma. The district was one of the most important sources of lead and zinc during the early 20th century, and Picher was at the center of the district's production. At its peak, Picher was one of the leading lead and zinc mining towns in the world, producing more than half of the world's supply of lead. The town's success helped fuel the growth of the entire district, which is essential to the country's economy during World War I and World War II. The development of mining in Picher occurred over several decades and involved various companies and individuals. Here are some of the key sequential events that led to the development of mining. In the late 19th centuries, lead and zinc deposits were discovered in what would later become Picher, Oklahoma. Small-scale mining operation began in the early 1900s with many individual miners and small companies working the land. In the early 1920s, several mining companies began to consolidate their operations in Picher. This led to the formation of larger companies with greater financial resources and the ability to mine deeper deposits. By 1930s, Picher was one of the most productive mining regions in the world, with several large companies extracting lead and zinc from the ground. By 1960s, the demand for lead and zinc had decreased, and many of the mines in Picher began to close. The mining operation in the town involved both open pit mining and underground mining. The extracted ores were processed in mills and smeltered, which produced large amounts of waste materials containing high levels of metals and toxic chemicals. The waste from mining operations were dumped in large piles, which are called chat piles, as seen on the images to the right, which covered large areas of land and polluted the air, soil, and water around the town. The chat piles contain high levels of heavy metals and toxic chemicals, including lead, cadmium, and arsenic. The toxic substance the toxic substances in the chat piles caused high levels of contamination in the soil and the water due to years of mining, minerals leaching into it, making it unsuitable for agriculture and other purposes. It also contaminated groundwater and the surface water, making it unsuitable for human consumption. The wind blowing over the chat piles created toxic dust clouds inhaled by people and animals living nearby. They further made the land unsuitable for development and other land use, resulting in economic losses for the community. The US Environmental Protection Agency in 1983 designated Piker as a Superfund site. A Superfund site is deemed as contaminated with hazardous waste, which poses as a risk to possess to human health and other environment. It essentially indicates that Piker is among the most contaminated places in the country. In August 1994, to address the threat of lead exposure to children, EPA began sampling soils at high access areas, such as daycare, schoolyards, and other areas where children congregate. The sampling detected significant concentrations of lead, cadmium, and other heavy metals in the soil. The results found at least an average of lead levels being 25 times more than what was the deemed appropriate level. At the same time, in 1994, the Indian Health Services tested native children living in the site. The result indicated that approximately 35% of children tested had concentration of lead in their blood which exceeded 10 micrograms per deciliter. The CDC posits that such high blood lead levels is a huge concern and can cause long-term damage and if not permanent damage. The mining industry was the primary economic driver for Picher. All the events previously described led to the decline in the mining activity, leading to a struggling local economy with a few job opportunities and a decrease in property value. After the EPA declared Picher as a Superfund site in 1980s, the town's economy was further impacted as it discouraged new businesses and residents from settling in the area. In 2006, the US government launched a buyout program to help address the environmental and health impacts of the mining activities in the area. The program helped residents relocate due to the health and safety risk living associated in the area. This led to further reduction in the local economy. With the collapse of the local economy, the standard of living declined and made it difficult for many residents to continue living in the area. Many of the residents left the town in search of employment opportunities elsewhere, further leading to a decline in tax revenues and, as stated before, an economic decline. This town was once home to over 14,000 people during the peak of its mining activity, but by early 2000s, the population had declined to just over 1,500. In the most recent census conducted in 2010, the population of Picher was 20, and in 2019, it is estimated that the population of the town is zero. In summary, the story of Picher, Oklahoma, is a tragic example of devastating impact that human activities can have on the environment and communities that depend on it. The mining activities that were once the economic backbone of the town left a legacy of environmental contamination and health risks that affected generations of residents. The US government's buyout program was a necessary response to the health and safety risks associated with living in the area, but it also contributed to the economic collapse of the town. Today, Piker serves as a stark reminder of the need to balance economic development with environment and public health concerns. Thank you.